Hey, I'd like to welcome you to another episode of Mission Matters. My name is Adam Torres, and if you'd like to apply to be a guest on the show, just head on over to missionmatters.com and click on Be Our Guest to apply. All right, so today I have Jean Meeks Koch on the line, and she's CEO and founder of Positively People. Jean, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Adam. It's a pleasure to be here with you today.
All right, Jean. So this is a hot topic. A lot of entrepreneurs and executives watch this, and we'll be talking about really multi-generational family planning when it comes to businesses and get some insight from your vantage point and experience and really provide some tools to our audience on how they can be, if they're business owners, or how they can be prepared for planning for, again, multi-generational issues. That being said, Jean, we'll start this episode the way that we start them all with our Mission Matters Minute. So, Jean, we at Mission Matters, we amplify stories for entrepreneurs, executives, and experts. That's our mission. Jean, what mission matters to you?
Oh my goodness. Well, my passion and what mission matters to myself and Positively People and as a senior consultant at the Family Business Consulting Group is our belief that multi-generational family enterprises, they're precious and they're a vital, important piece of our economies across the world, and that they really deserve care and wise counsel.
It's great. Love bringing mission-based entrepreneurs and executives on the show to share why they do what they do, like what gets them excited and fired up to go out there into the marketplace and to make a difference, and love the difference you're making here. And I think just to get us started, we'll get into, of course, the overall topic, multi-generational family planning, what that looks like. But I mean, how did you get on this path, like personally, like of being an entrepreneur and going into business?
But that's a great question. I never started out to be an entrepreneur. I never thought I had that in my DNA. But years ago, my first husband and I went into business together. He started a multi-million-dollar construction company. And through that process, he pulled me in. I became an entrepreneur with him, hand in hand. It was a thriving commercial construction company. And then, unfortunately, there was a devastating accident and he passed away. And from that, I journeyed forward into a different pathway in academics, decided to go into teaching, became a professor, focused on getting my PhD in teaching. And from teaching, I really was brought into the consulting world through my teaching, and then fell in love with the consulting world. My very first, it was interesting, I was reflecting on it, my very first consultant client was a multi-generational family business, and they were in the nursery industry. And I fell in love with the whole family aspect of it. How does one generation have this great idea and they started and they put everything into it, and how does it continue to get passed forward to the next generations?
Mm-hmm. It's a great story. And so from entrepreneur to academia and then getting back into entrepreneurship. So
Right.
I like to say, I mean, I've interviewed thousands at this point of entrepreneurs, and everybody's story is a little bit different. Like some people feel they were born to be an entrepreneur. They had this certain background. Other people were accidental entrepreneurs. Some were voluntold, right? Like all these, all of these other like occurrences and ways to kind of go on this journey. So I like to ask this question often to our guests. If you could maybe go back to that Jean that was just getting started as an entrepreneur, that Jean that was just getting out there, having the benefit of hindsight, right? The ups, the downs, the sideways of being an entrepreneur. What kind of things would you tell her?
I would tell her to let go of fear-based thinking. I would tell her that the world and the universe has an abundance of opportunities. So don't approach being an entrepreneur from a fear base, that there isn't enough. There is plenty, and not from that scarcity model, but from that true abundance model. That's what I'd tell her today.
It's great. And I feel like everybody needs to hear that message. I want that message too. So that's current day. um, so going a little bit further here. So you go back into consulting, and now this is with and now going a little bit further in the career. Where does Positively People come in line with this?
Positively People is actually my second consulting
Mm,
firm. The first consulting firm that I had was really more focused on more governmental work, change management work, in more governmental enterprises, larger institutions. But through that process, I came across family business and
mm,
family businesses. And so Positively People, its primary focus is in multi-generational family business consulting. I was fortunate to be invited into the Family Business Consulting Group, which is a wonderful collaboration of family business consultants that have a passion for this. And so that led me to be a senior consultant at FBCG, as well as have my own firm, Positively People.
mm. So I think as we get further into this, maybe it would help to, I don't want to assume everybody knows or understands this idea of multi-generational business, and some of the complexity on that. So, I mean, it sounds simple, right? Maybe the grandparent starts the business, then they may, they may leave it to an heir. It may go down multiple generations. But from your standpoint and experience, like how do we define multi-generational family businesses?
Sure, that's a really good question because multi-generational family businesses, in my vantage point,
Mhm.
is really that the family as a whole has, they're intentional about wanting to keep the family business that they started, that they created, that from that owner founder
Mhm.
starting it to getting their siblings, their children involved in it. And then the business continues to grow and maybe subsequent businesses are formed from the original business. And then they become more intentional about the next generation of cousins. They have an interest in it. And so as a whole family system, they start saying, we really want to continue this legacy on. And there are so many examples of significant family legacies across the world. You'll get family legacies that have been into the 14th, 15th, 16th generation. When we
Wow.
think of some of the amazing, wine families that started out of France and Italy, and you look at some of the Middle Eastern family enterprises that are out there. So they really are a significant piece of the fiber of our worldwide economies.
Mm. And so what are some of the issues that you find in this? Because when you say something like and I'll give you a little bit of my backstory for the audience that have been watching this for a long time. I was in finance for almost 14 years. So
Mm.
most of my practice was we're business owners. And there was this idea of planning for, after maybe the founder or co-founder started the business, like what would the next generation do with it. So maybe the child or the adult kids, however we say it, maybe they weren't necessarily interested in taking over the business, or maybe they were, but they didn't have the skill set, or maybe, I mean, infinite complexity there. Maybe they want to be passive and hire an operator to take over the business, but they still wanted to reap the rewards of keeping it a family business and have some level of control. Like what are some of that? And that's my backstory. But again, I didn't specialize in the planning side of the multi-generational side of things. That's just my high level understanding. What are some of the challenges that you find business owners run into when they start going down this path of planning?
Yeah. I think the most important piece that I find is really that alignment of vision, right? What do we want to be? Where do we want and where do we see ourselves as a family together? And when I look at the families that I have the great fortune to work with, not all family members will be working in the business,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Some will be working in the business, some might be on the corporate board, Many of them might be owners or a beneficiary through a trust, right? And then they'll all be part of the family at some level, right? There'll be a cousin, there'll be a sibling, there'll be a mother, there'll be an aunt, there'll be an uncle, there'll be a grandparent, right? So we really look at it through the lens of this three-circle model, which is we look and say, why are family enterprises unique? Okay, because we're not just looking at the business and how that corporate governance is, we're also looking at the family and how the family impacts the operating business, okay, as an owner, future owner, or just a family member, okay, and then how the family impacts governance, how the enterprises are governed. So we're really looking at it through three lenses all the time.
What do you find, and family, or I should say, family businesses are doing right when they really get it right? Like, what are some of the things that are in place? So you mentioned vision as one of them, but like just getting a little bit more technical. What are some of the things that the good planning, the business owners that have planned well have in common? I guess I'd say.
Yeah. So I would say that the family, multi-generational families that have a really good handle on things and are doing things quote unquote right, whatever right happens to
Yeah.
be, is they really focus on governance, creating systems and structures and protocols and policies that everyone agrees to. So whether it's the corporate governance side, is how are we going to oversee our businesses? How are we going to hold management in our businesses accountable to the expectations of our shareholders? That has strong governance. Those protocols and policies are put into place and they're understood. And then on the family side of the equation, we also have family governance, which is a really unique piece all to itself, because a lot of us know corporate governance. We're aware of it, we hear it, right? But family governance means as we have more and more family members into our family enterprise. So say I'm a family and I have 5 branches. The owner founder had 5 children, and now so we have 5 family branches. I look at it like a mighty oak tree. So each branch continues to grow through the generation, right? So we have a sibling, maybe the sibling has married, has a partner. Now maybe there's children within that branch. So now we have some twigs off of that branch. Now maybe those twigs get stronger and stronger, and as they get stronger and stronger, now they have a partner, and maybe there's more children. So you can see how this oak, the branches from this oak start growing stronger and stronger and becomes larger and larger. And it's really interesting. I live here in South Carolina, where down in Charleston, where we have a lot of magnificent oak trees. And many times I'll sit on my patio and I'll look at some of these magnificent oak trees, and they remind me of family enterprises, the strength of these solid trunks and these branches that grow stronger, right? So we're feeding, the trunk is feeding each branch is continuing to feed the next generation, and there's a connectivity, there's a root structure, a connectivity that's critical to know and understand and respect and value.
What are some of the like, first off, when somebody's watching this, they may be thinking, okay, like, this all makes sense, but maybe some of this planning can be done later. I guess what I want to emphasize here is the idea that what you said of the entire family agreeing and everybody being on the same page and getting these rules and procedures kind of in place. Can you talk a little bit about the importance of doing that sooner rather than later? Obviously, the extreme example would be that maybe the founder or co-founder is no longer with us, right? And maybe some of that planning wasn't done, and now it's left on the next generation to then get everybody to agree. Can you just kind of talk about the importance of planning in advance?
Absolutely. You know, so often in family enterprises, when we look at owner-founder generation and then into the sibling generation, right? We're really developing the owner-founders, that entrepreneurial spirit, right? So they're grasping everything, they're building, they're empowering, on the home front, the siblings, their children have a really large taste of their parents being involved in the business, so they might get pulled into it, they might get interested in it. But there's so much of this entrepreneurial spirit that's happening, and then first stage of business maturity happening, that we rarely have time to hit the pause button, right? And say, we have to pause, and we really need to not just work in the business, we need to work on the business. Right? So 10 years from now, how old are we all going to be? Okay. And where do we want to be at? Because we really need to understand, what do we need to start putting into place and developing now so that we can intentionally be where we want to be. Right? So I like to say that it's great to have the intentions, right? But without any actions, we never show up where we want to be. And we have to take the time to be intentional about where we want to be. And what are the actions that we all agree upon that we want to move forward with to become that which we want to become as a multi-generational family business.
So you mentioned two of the generations previously. So the co-founder, founder generation, the sibling generation. Can you talk about the significance of maybe the third generation and why that is so important to keeping the family business going?
Yeah, absolutely. And so to me, that is the pivotal point in family enterprise. That's to me one of the first pivotal points that happens. And I spend a lot of my passion time between the sibling generation, that second generation, and that third generation of cousins, okay? Because to me, that goes back to shirt sleeves and 3 generations. And so often, people think that saying came out of the fact that, the founder generation, creates it and starts it, and then the siblings build off of it, and the third generation of cousins just spend it all. Okay. And I really disagree with that. I think that is a myth. It's a fallacy that's out there. I really believe that in the third generation, if we don't put together good governance, good systems and policies and protocols on how we as a generation of cousins will govern this gift that's been created together, right? Then we don't have the capabilities to make the decisions that are in the best interest of the collective whole. Okay? Because of the founder generation is really looking at it, what's in the best interest of me, right? Me and my family and that kind of thing. In the sibling generation, right? The siblings all grew up together.
Right. And they had access to the founder, right?
And they had access to the founder.
So they got that knowledge. Like when I think about like my dad or like other entrepreneurs I've been around, it's like I got to speak directly to them. I got to ask them questions and things like that. So it's a privilege.
It's a privilege, absolutely. By the time we get to the cousin generation, many times we have very little time left with that founder generation. So all of that tribal knowledge and all of that passion, we've got to try to glean off. But when we're in the cousin generation also, we have to understand that we didn't grow up they grew up as children typically in the same household most of the time, right? Gathering for dinner around the dinner table or breakfast or whatever, hearing all this business conversation the same way, the same messaging. Okay. Now we're into the cousin generation, and let's go back to the oak tree and the 5 branches. So now we have 5 households, right? And we have a partner or spouse that's now in that household that didn't grow up hearing from the founder around the dinner table or whatever. So they're bringing another perspective of values to that family. Okay. So now we're taking, we're going to get this way. We're taking 5 dinner table conversations that have different perspectives, right? And now we have to bring the 5 dinner tables together. So we have to create an environment to do that and align around how we want to collaborate for the greater good of all 5 branches, not just for one branch, so that the tree continues to be strong, continues to grow.
Yeah. And what I love about the kind of the space, but what's always been so tricky to me, and the example I always like to go back to is, like, think about how many times you went to a movie with somebody and you watched the exact same movie, and maybe you had some misunderstandings on the plot, or you thought something happened and there was something else. Normally I'm the one that's wrong, by the way. I'm like, no, this happened. And immediately I'm like, oh, wait a minute. Okay, it didn't. And I always lose that bet of, I bet you know, I always lose it. But anyway, so now if you think about that, imagine that, like, all the people observing like this movie, which is life, right? Over the course of many, many years, and then trying to interpret what maybe the founder or co-founder wanted, or what their beliefs were, or things like that, as an audience looking in, right? And even if you didn't necessarily have the access. So now, and it's not like, and one of the things you're debunking a lot of myths here. One that I like to bring out is really, it's not that there's all these people that necessarily have these wrong intentions. Sometimes misunderstandings and things come from their looking at the movie and maybe interpreting it differently, and feel very passionately that the founder or co-founder wanted something done a certain way. But if the planning wasn't done in advance, and if all of this wasn't documented, then, like, again, like a movie, it's left up to interpretation.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that's spot on. It is left to interpretation. And one of the beautiful things is, in the first, second, and third generation, if you start the work, and you get the work started early, that founder generation, if we're fortunate, they're still around. And so we can still access them. They can be part of the process, which is even better. We just completed a large family enterprise retreat, and we actually had the matriarch of the family. We had 4 generations there, but the matriarch at 94 was there, and the stories she could remember that she could share, and it was just so beautiful, because from those stories, you can start looking at your governance and saying, hey, how do we keep this alive? This is why we're all here together, to keep this alive, and continue it on, this legacy. And it really is about legacy.
So you mentioned earlier in the interview, of course, positively people, and maybe some of the work you're doing. I want to go a little bit deeper into that. So maybe tell us how positively people fits into this planning scenario. Like, what exactly would the responsibility be for positively people?
Okay, very good. So Positively People and FBCG, we really focus on helping families create the platform to start, number one, having these conversations, right? Because oftentimes they're difficult conversations. We're coming from different ways of thinking, right? So by coming together, we can help facilitate and provide a platform to talk about differences in how we view the future. That's number one, right? Because our critical element is to get alignment on where are we going, right? And we're coming from, again, now different family branches, right? Maybe some different, I call them nuclear families. So I say with each branch, that's a nuclear family. There's the big family and then the nuclear family. So each nuclear family might have some slightly different values, right? I might have one nuclear family that enjoys, really lovely material items, and that has meaning to them. I might have to have another nuclear family branch that it's like, that doesn't have meaning to them. What has meaning to them is, being active in some nonprofit. right? So we're bringing different values to the table, and what we can do is help create a wonderful, safe environment, safe ecosystem to have great discussion, right? Great defining the future. What does that look like through discussion? And then helping make decisions to start putting some things in motion and getting buy-in and commitment for doing that. And I think that's the power of the work that we do, really providing that safe, neutral space where the voices of all can be heard. And it's not just, well, you in the family business, you have the hat of president or you have the hat of this, or, when we come together as a whole family in conversation and governance, we're taking away, the titles, right? We're taking away the titles and we're bringing it back down to basics of you as a family member and what's important to you.
You also mentioned Family Business Consulting Group. Maybe speak a little bit on that and exactly what that is.
Sure. The Family Business Consulting Group has its roots back with John Ward, an amazing, amazing individual, and Craig Aronoff. It goes back over close to 30 years now. Both of them were deans at universities that were studying the family business enterprise world. So they are really, I would say, some of the original thought thinkers in this area. They collaborated together and formed the Family Business Consulting Group, which is a consortium of practitioners, shared colleagues working together with families, where we get to share a lot of thoughts, ideas, intellectual property. And I think as a group of practitioners together, the Family Business Consulting Group brings out some of the best in intellectual property and the way to look at things, providing great thought thinking to the discipline of family business enterprise. And family business enterprise, I think, is a discipline, is really, really just into its, I would say, early preteen years. I mean, it's really hasn't been even though this has existed for hundreds of years, the practice of this is only about 40 years old. That's an infant, right?
Yeah.
And so family business consulting or family business advisory is very different than management consulting. Because when you're management consulting, you're really looking at how the business operates or the businesses operate. As family business advisors or consultants, we're looking at the power of all three circles, and that all three circles are interdependent and they all have to be healthy. If one's not healthy, the entire enterprise can't be healthy.
So, Jean, as I want you to speak to for a moment to the, let's say, business owners out there, specifically to that founder, co-founder generation, and maybe actually the sibling generation as well. If they haven't started any type of planning yet, and maybe this has been something that's been on their plate, and it's one of those things that they have to get done. Obviously, at the end of this, I'll give the opportunity to leave your website or contact info or anything like that so people can follow up. But just thought process wise, what are some of the things that that these business owners and also sibling generation, what are some of the things that they should be thinking about if they haven't started anything yet?
Yeah. So I would really encourage them to look for good resources. Okay. And really if you are a family business and you want to continue on through your sibling generation, encourage the grandchildren or the first cousin generation, then don't solve for a management issue. That's not your issue. Your issue is really on continuity and family enterprise. And so I'd be looking for resources in that vein, okay? There are some wonderful universities that have family business centers that's exactly what they're focused on, which is very different than the College of Business and focused on business management. Doesn't mean we don't look at business management. We're steeped with great credentials in, business management challenges. For example, my master's is in accounting, though my PhD is in organizational systems and behaviors. So I have that steep knowledge, but we take that above and beyond just the operating business. So I would look for those strong resources out there. FBCG, the Family Business Consulting Group, on their website, they have a plethora of amazing resources out there. Another great reach out, and I would do a shout out, is to the Family Business Magazine, which is a wonderful, wonderful subscription-based magazine that's for families, by families, which is multi-generational families talking about challenges, issues. They put on some amazing conferences every year, which is a really great way to start getting your toe dipped in this world of multi-generational family enterprise.
Fantastic. Well, and all great tips there. And Jean, I just want to say, it's been great having you on the show today. If I know you're busy, lots of things going on, lots of things going on, lots of business owners out there you're helping. That being said, what's next? I mean, what's next for you? What's next for Positively People?
Well, it's really interesting that you say that, because at Positively People, my team is small, and my team is very much a family team, interestingly enough. So I am one of 6. And so my youngest sibling, my sister, works with me. She's a right hand to me. I also have my son that works with me and helps me with behavioral assessments. I also have my youngest daughter that works part-time. So I have my own little microcosm as a family business. So I have to not only model
awesome,
it, but I have to model it internally. So that's
like
kind of
your
fun.
slogan could be, let my family help your family. No, really.
So I like that. But I think about my own succession plan, right? So again, how can I look to the future and say, how can I start transitioning and building up my own next generation of successors in my own practice, which I think we all need to be thinking about.
That's awesome. Well, Jean, again, awesome having you on the show. If somebody's watching this and they want to learn more about Positively People and connect with you and your team and your family, what's the best way for them to do that?
Sure. So 2 easy ways to get to us. One is through Positively People, and it's just positivelypeople.com. Okay. The other one is you can reach me at the Family Business Consulting Group, which is really easy. Also, it's just the THEFBCG.com. And either way, you can get to me.
Fantastic. And we'll put all that in the show notes, of course, so that my audience can just click on it and head right on over and connect with you and your team. And speaking of the audience, if this is your first time with Mission Matters, we're a platform that's all about bringing on entrepreneurs, executives, and experts and having them share why they do what they do, like what excites them out there in the marketplace and gets them out there going to make a difference. If that's the type of content that you're interested in or that excites you, we definitely welcome you to hit that subscribe button, because we have many more mission-based individuals coming up on the line, and we don't want you to miss a thing. And Jean, thank you again for coming on the show. It really has been a pleasure.
Well, it's been a pleasure, Adam. It's been, and I love, subscriber, and I love the different guests that you have, and I enjoy listening to more to come.
All right. Fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Adam.